I know what she's hiding, Marcus. If you marry Jessica tomorrow, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The words hung in the air between mother and son. Eleanor Wilson stood before her only child, her face lined with worry, her eyes filled with the pain of what she'd discovered. Marcus stared back in disbelief, his world crumbling before him. The woman he loves so much has just been confirmed to not be who he thinks she is. To understand how we arrived at this devastating moment between a mother and her son, we need to go back 3 weeks earlier. But before we dive in, if you stand against injustice and prejudice, click on the subscribe and like button and proudly post in the comment the flag of your country. You will definitely get a great reply to your comment. Marcus Wilson was the definition of success. At just 35 years old, he had built Wilson Tech Solutions into a $500 million company from nothing but his brilliant mind and relentless work ethic. His innovative security software was revolutionizing the industry, with government contracts rolling in by the day. He had everything: wealth, respect, power, everything except someone to share it with. That all changed when Jessica Parker walked into his life. Beautiful, charming, and sophisticated, the 32-year-old PR executive seemed like the answer to his prayers. Her porcelain skin, flowing blonde hair, and dazzling smile captivated Marcus from their first meeting at a charity gala. 8 months later, he surprised everyone by announcing their engagement. No one was more surprised or concerned than Eleanor Wilson. At 60, the former detective had razor-sharp instincts that had served her well through decades of police work. Since losing her husband 10 years ago, Marcus had become her world. And something about Jessica Parker set off alarm bells she couldn't ignore. "She's perfect, Mom," Marcus insisted during their weekly Sunday dinner. "You'll warm up to her eventually." Eleanor smiled and nodded, keeping her reservations to herself. What could she say? That Jessica's smile never quite reached her eyes? That her stories about her background seemed to shift slightly with each telling? That when Jessica thought no one was watching, her mask of perfection slipped to reveal something cold and calculating beneath? Keith Johnson, Marcus's best friend since college and now his COO, shared Eleanor's concerns. "Don't you think this is moving a little fast, man?" he asked during a rare moment alone with Marcus. "I mean, 8 months." "When you know, you know," Marcus replied confidently, brushing off his friend's concern just as he had his mother's. What Marcus didn't see was Jessica's transformation when he left the room. The way her warm smile vanished, replaced by a look of smug satisfaction. The hushed phone calls she made when he was working late. The contemptuous way she treated restaurant servers when Marcus was checking the bill. "I need to hire a new maid for my apartment," Jessica announced over dinner one evening. "My last one was just terrible. So lazy. Do you know anyone reliable, Eleanor?" Eleanor noticed the condescending tone, the subtle dig. "I might," she replied carefully, an idea beginning to form in her mind. Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong with her son's fiancée. Little inconsistencies kept piling up. Jessica claimed to have grown up in Connecticut, then later mentioned her high school in Pennsylvania. She said her parents had died in a car accident, but then casually referenced visiting her mother during Christmas. Small lies that might seem insignificant to others, but to a former detective like Eleanor, they were red flags waving in a hurricane. But Eleanor's suspicions turned to certainty one evening when she stopped by Marcus's house unexpectedly. Standing in the hallway, she overheard Jessica on the phone in the adjacent room, her voice low and calculating. "Just be patient," Jessica whispered. "After the wedding, we'll have everything we need. His mother's suspicious, but it doesn't matter now. He trusts me completely." Eleanor froze, her heart pounding. There was only one way to find out what Jessica was hiding. She needed to get closer, to see Jessica when her mask was off completely. Drawing on her years of detective work, Eleanor hatched a plan. She would go undercover as a maid that Jessica needed. She perfectly planned a complete makeup by the best makeup artist in town who completely turned her from the great woman she was into a lowly maid called Maria Santiago. What lengths would you go to protect someone you love from making the biggest mistake of their life? Click the subscribe button now, because this story of deception, prejudice, and justice is just the beginning. And trust me, you won't believe what happens next. 3 days later, Maria Santiago applied for the housekeeping position at Jessica's luxury penthouse apartment. With gray-streaked hair, glasses, makeup that added years to her appearance, and subtle padding that changed her silhouette, Eleanor was unrecognizable. She spoke with a slight accent and affected a submissive demeanor, the invisible servant that employers like Jessica barely noticed. "You come highly recommended," Jessica said, barely glancing at Eleanor's falsified resume. "My fiancé is very successful, and I entertain important people. I need discretion and perfection." "Understand?" Eleanor nodded meekly, suppressing the rage she felt as Jessica talked down to her. "Yes, Miss Parker, I understand. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp." Behind closed doors, away from Marcus and his social circle, Jessica Parker was a different woman entirely. What Eleanor witnessed over the next 2 weeks made her blood boil. "Clean the bathroom again," Jessica would snap. "Are all you people this lazy? No wonder you're scrubbing toilets for a living." The casual racism flowed freely when Jessica thought she was only speaking to the help. Each degrading comment, each sneering insult was further evidence of Jessica's true character. "I swear, Maria, his mother is so tiresome," Jessica complained one day while texting on her phone. "Always asking about my family, my past, as if a woman her age has any business questioning me. Once we're married, I'll make sure we only see her on holidays." Eleanor scrubbed the counter harder, choking back her words. But the most disturbing discovery came on day 10, when a handsome man in his mid-30s arrived at the apartment. Jessica's demeanor transformed instantly as she rushed into his arms. "Alex, baby," she purred, kissing him passionately. "Did anyone see you come up?" Eleanor pretended to dust in the adjacent room, straining to hear their conversation. "No one saw me," Alex replied. "How's our favorite CEO doing?" Jessica laughed coldly. "Clueless as ever. He actually asked if I wanted to sign a prenup. Can you believe it? I talked him out of it, of course. Told him it would break my heart to think he didn't trust me." "That's my girl," Alex said proudly. 3 more weeks and we'll own half of Wilson Tech." Eleanor nearly dropped her feather duster. This wasn't just about money. They were after Marcus's company. Over the next few days, Eleanor gathered what information she could, taking photos of documents when Jessica was in the shower, recording conversations when possible. Each day brought new evidence of Jessica's true nature and plans. The breaking point came during an evening when Jessica was preparing to host a small gathering of her friends. Eleanor was polishing the expensive glass coffee table when Jessica returned from a heated phone call with what appeared to be a wedding vendor. "Incompetent fools," Jessica muttered, pouring herself a generous glass of red wine. She paced angrily, the wine sloshing dangerously close to the edge of her glass. "Would you like me to take that, Miss Parker?" Eleanor asked, eyeing the expensive white sofa. "No, I would not like you to take that, Maria," Jessica mocked in a crude imitation of Eleanor's accent. "Just do your job and stay out of my way." Seconds later, Jessica turned too quickly and wine splashed across the glass table and onto the white rug beneath. "Look what you made me do!" Jessica shrieked, though Eleanor was standing feet away. "I'm sorry, Miss Parker. Let me clean." "You distracted me. This rug cost more than you make in a year." Before Eleanor could respond, Jessica threw the remaining contents of her glass directly at Eleanor, the red wine splashing across her uniform and face. Maybe that will teach you to pay attention, Jessica snarled. Eleanor stood frozen, wine dripping down her face, staining her clothes. In 40 years, no one had ever treated her with such contempt, such casual cruelty. Every instinct screamed at her to reveal herself, to put this woman in her place. But the detective in her knew the job wasn't done. She needed more evidence. So she swallowed her pride, wiped her face, and said, "I'll get the stain remover, Miss Parker." As Eleanor cleaned herself in the bathroom, tears of rage mixing with the wine stains, she made a promise to herself. Jessica Parker would never become her daughter-in-law. Never. No matter what it took. As the warm water washed over her, Eleanor began to plan her next move. Jessica Parker had no idea who she was truly dealing with, but she was about to find out. Eleanor's opportunity came on a Thursday afternoon. Jessica had left for a hair appointment, casually instructing Maria to organize her home office, a room that had previously been strictly off-limits. "Don't touch anything on the desk," Jessica had ordered before leaving. "Just vacuum and dust the shelves. I'll know if you've moved anything." The warning only confirmed Eleanor's suspicions that something valuable was hidden there. As soon as Jessica's car pulled away from the building, Eleanor began her careful search of the office. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Tasteful decor, expensive art, a sleek desktop computer that Eleanor knew would be password protected. But years of detective work had taught her that people rarely display their secrets in plain sight. Behind a small painting on the wall, Eleanor discovered a wall safe. Not unusual for someone of Jessica's apparent wealth, but interesting nonetheless. Eleanor carefully examined the painting, noting its position so she could return it exactly as she found it. The real discovery came when Eleanor moved a potted plant on the bookshelf, revealing a hidden compartment built into the wall. Inside was a slim silver laptop, far more portable and concealable than the desktop computer prominently displayed on the desk. Eleanor slipped on latex gloves she'd hidden in her uniform pocket and carefully extracted the laptop. Opening it revealed a password screen. But Eleanor had been watching Jessica closely for days. She tried various combinations based on patterns she'd observed when Jessica unlocked her phone. On the fourth attempt, Alex Weinstein 90. The screen unlocked. What Eleanor found made her blood run cold. The laptop contained detailed files on at least 6 different men, all successful entrepreneurs in the tech sector. Each file included photographs, personal information, company details, and financial records. But most disturbing were the notes sections detailing extraction timelines and liquidation strategies. One file showed a tech founder who had lost his company and filed for bankruptcy 3 years earlier. The notes coldly stated, "Extraction complete. Assets transferred, $4.2 million. Patents sold, $12 million. Another file showed a man whose engagement announcement appeared in the New York Times, followed by a wedding cancellation notice 6 months later. The notes read, "Operation terminated early. Family interference. Limited extraction, $850,000. Eleanor quickly connected her small camera disguised as a brooch to the laptop, photographing screen after screen of damning evidence. Then she found it. A folder labeled Wilson M. Inside was everything about her son, his daily routines, psychological assessment, noting his vulnerability points, detailed plans for their extraction timeline, and a list of Marcus's assets prioritized by liquidity. Even more chilling was a subfolder marked contingencies that included strategies for handling the mother problem. Proposals ranging from gradual alienation to health emergency distraction. They had plotted everything, even considering how to remove Eleanor from Marcus's life if she became too problematic. As Eleanor carefully returned the laptop to its hiding place, she heard voices from the hallway. Jessica was back early, and she wasn't alone. Eleanor slipped quietly into the adjacent bathroom, leaving the door slightly ajar to listen. The hair appointment was a waste of time. Jessica was saying to Alex as they entered the apartment. Let's go over the final preparations for next week. Are you sure it's safe to talk here? Alex asked. What about the maid? Maria, she's nothing to worry about. Barely speaks English and doesn't have the brains to understand what we're discussing. Besides, I've been making her life miserable. She'll quit any day now. Eleanor's jaw tightened at Jessica's assessment, but she remained silent, listening as the couple moved into the living room. I've already set up the offshore accounts, Alex said, his voice dropping slightly. Once you're married, we start the transfers. Small amounts first, then the bigger sums after you've established regular access patterns to his accounts. What about the security software? Jessica asked. That's where the real money is. Our buyers in Shanghai are offering $20 million for the source code alone. If we can get the vulnerability exploit too, that doubles. Eleanor felt sick. They weren't just planning to steal Marcus's money. They were preparing to sell his life's work, his revolutionary security software, to foreign interests. And Marcus suspects nothing? Alex asked. Jessica laughed coldly. Please, he's so love-struck he can't see straight. When I suggested moving my things into his place before the wedding, he actually apologized for not offering sooner. I'll have complete access to his home office by tomorrow. Eleanor had heard enough. She quietly took photos of her own reflection in the mirror, documentation of her disguise, then began recording audio on her hidden device. This was no longer just about protecting Marcus from a gold digger. This was corporate espionage with international implications. Over the next few days, Eleanor gathered more evidence while Jessica's suspicion and mistreatment intensified. Suddenly, Maria could do nothing right. The floors weren't clean enough. The laundry wasn't folded properly. The groceries weren't the correct brands. Are you looking through my papers? Jessica demanded one afternoon, catching Eleanor dusting near her desk. You seem very interested in my personal business. No, Miss Parker. Eleanor replied, eyes downcast. Just cleaning, like you asked. Jessica moved closer, studying Eleanor's face with narrow-eyed suspicion. You know, there's something about you that doesn't quite fit. Most maids don't notice the things you notice. Don't ask the questions you ask with your eyes. Eleanor's heart raced, but her expression remained neutral. I don't understand, Miss Parker. I think you do, Jessica replied coolly. I think you understand perfectly, which is why I'm watching you very carefully now. The threat was clear. Jessica's instincts had been triggered, and she was now actively testing Eleanor, assigning increasingly demeaning tasks, scrutinizing her reactions, trying to provoke a response that would reveal Maria wasn't who she claimed to be. But Eleanor Wilson hadn't been one of the department's top detectives for nothing. With each new humiliation, she gathered more evidence. With each suspicious glance from Jessica, she documented another damning conversation. The stakes were too high to break cover now, no matter how degrading the treatment became. The clock was ticking. The wedding was just days away, and Eleanor now had proof that Jessica Parker wasn't just after Marcus's money. She was part of an international conspiracy that could destroy everything he had built. The opportunity presented itself 3 days later when Marcus called his mother, his voice tight. I'm flying to San Francisco tomorrow for an emergency meeting with our West Coast developers, he explained. Some security vulnerability needs my personal attention. I'll be gone for 2 days. Eleanor listened, careful to maintain a neutral tone despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. The security vulnerability was almost certainly part of Jessica's plan, perhaps even manufactured by her team to get Marcus out of town. I thought we could have dinner when I get back, Marcus continued. Jessica will be busy anyway. She's hosting some charity committee meeting at the apartment. That was it, the opening they needed. Eleanor knew from her time as Maria that Jessica's charity committees were actually meetings with her co-conspirators, disguised as legitimate social gatherings. With Marcus out of town, Jessica would likely drop all pretense among her trusted circle. "That sounds nice, honey," Eleanor replied, forcing warmth into her voice despite the tension between them. "Have a safe flight." Now she had a chance to catch Jessica and her accomplices in the act, planning their crimes, revealing their intentions in their own words. If she could record such a conversation, it would be the smoking gun they needed. The next evening, with Marcus safely on his flight to California, Eleanor once again transformed into Maria. The disguise felt different this time, less like a costume and more like armor. She wasn't going in as a maid, but as a mother and former detective determined to protect her son. "If I can get her true voice on tape, saying what she really thinks about my son, about his race, about her plans, that's something even Jessica can't talk her way out of." The plan was simple. Eleanor would go to the party, pretending to return for personal items she'd allegedly left behind during her cleaning. The timing was critical. She needed the party to be in full swing, Jessica and her friends relaxed and unguarded. For extra security, she called a friend Daniel to go to the location with her, in case of any assault or wrong situation. At precisely 8:45 p.m., Eleanor got into Jessica's building through the service entrance. The security guard recognized her as Jessica's maid and barely glanced up from his phone. Exactly as they'd hoped. Eleanor took the service elevator to Jessica's floor, her heart pounding in her chest, while Daniel stayed back outside waiting for her signal to come in. Through the door of Jessica's apartment, she could hear music, laughter, the clink of glasses. She pressed the small recording device, activating it before slipping it into her pocket. Then, taking a deep breath, she knocked firmly. The door opened to reveal Jessica, stunning in a sleek black dress, a champagne flute in her hand. Her smile vanished the instant she recognized Maria. "What are you doing here?" Jessica hissed, blocking the doorway. Behind her, Eleanor could see about 8 people in the living room, lounging on furniture she had polished countless times. "I'm very sorry to disturb, Miss Parker," Eleanor said, keeping her voice meek, her eyes downcast. "I left some personal medication earlier, my heart pills. I called but got no answer. The building manager said you were home and let me up." Jessica's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but the plausibility of the excuse, combined with the presence of her guests, made it difficult to simply turn Eleanor away. "Fine. Where did you leave them?" Jessica asked impatiently. "In the small drawer in the staff bathroom, Miss Parker. I'll be quick." Jessica reluctantly stepped aside, allowing Eleanor to enter while announcing to her guests, "My maid apparently left something behind." The guests barely acknowledged Eleanor as she shuffled toward the staff bathroom off the kitchen. She moved slowly, the recording device capturing every word as a man's voice. Alex, she presumed, complained about having their evening interrupted. "Don't worry," Jessica replied, her voice carrying clearly. "This won't take long. Make sure you top off everyone's glasses for the toast." Eleanor entered the bathroom but left the door slightly ajar. She pretended to search through drawers while listening intently to the conversation in the living room. "So where's the lucky groom tonight?" a woman's voice asked with obvious sarcasm, followed by laughter. "San Francisco," Jessica replied. "Exactly where we needed him to be. Our little security breach worked perfectly. He'll be gone for at least 2 days, fixing the problem that doesn't actually exist." More laughter, crueler this time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex's voice rose over the others. "I'd like to propose a toast. To Jessica, whose performance deserves an Academy Award, and to our biggest score yet, Wilson Tech." The sound of clinking glasses echoed through the apartment. "God, you should see how he looks at her," someone commented. "Like a lovesick puppy." She must be incredible, another woman speculated, triggering raucous laughter. A girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do, Jessica replied with mock wariness. Though I'll admit, pretending to be attracted to him is the hardest part, always talking about his algorithms and security protocols, so boring. But worth it for 50 million, right? Alex added. Plus whatever we get for the security software, Jessica agreed. The Russians are already offering 20 million just for the source code. Eleanor felt physically ill. They were planning to sell her son's life's work to foreign interests, destroying not just his company but potentially compromising national security in the process. Wilson Tech provided security systems for several government agencies, a fact these criminals clearly knew and intended to exploit. What about the mother? Someone asked. I heard she's been causing problems. Eleanor froze, straining to hear Jessica's response. Eleanor? Jessica's voice dripped with contempt. Just another obstacle to remove. She's smarter than I expected. But it doesn't matter now. Marcus already thinks she's interfering because she can't let go of her precious son. Must be hard for her, a man's voice commented. Watching her son marry a white woman, Jessica's laugh was cold and cutting. Please, that family should be grateful someone like me would even look at him. Do you know what his mother said when we first met? She actually asked about my intentions, as if I was some gold digger. If she only knew. The room erupted in laughter again. The best part, Jessica continued, her voice slightly slurred now from the champagne, is how I've convinced him his mother's concerns are actually racist. That she can't accept him being with a white woman. He's so desperate to prove he's enlightened that he defends me even when his instincts say otherwise. Psychological manipulation at its finest, someone commented admiringly. I've had a lot of practice, Jessica replied. But this is my masterpiece. In 3 days, I'll be Mrs. Wilson. In 3 weeks, I'll be single again with enough money to disappear forever. Eleanor had heard enough. She had Jessica's true voice on record. The contempt, the manipulation, the criminal conspiracy. This would be enough to convince Marcus, enough to save him from this predator. She quietly closed the bathroom drawer and prepared to leave as unobtrusively as she'd arrived. But as she stepped into the hallway, she found Jessica blocking her path. Find what you were looking for? Jessica asked, her eyes cold and suspicious. Yes, Miss Parker. Thank you, I'll be going now. Eleanor tried to move past her, but Jessica didn't budge. You know, it's the strangest thing, Jessica said, her voice dangerously soft. I don't remember you ever mentioning heart medication while you worked for me. And the building manager wasn't even on duty tonight. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Jessica's eyes were clear and focused now, all signs of champagne-induced relaxation gone. She'd been testing Eleanor, setting a trap, and Eleanor had walked right into it. I don't know what you mean, Miss Parker. I just needed my medicine. Jessica stepped closer, her perfume, the expensive scent Marcus had bought her, overwhelming in the narrow hallway. Who are you really? Jessica demanded. Because you're not just some housekeeper. No maid I've ever known notices the things you noticed, asks the questions you asked with your eyes. You were watching me, studying me. Eleanor began calculating escape routes. The front door was blocked by Jessica's guests. The service entrance was behind Jessica. The windows were 32 floors up. She was, effectively, cornered. Miss Parker, I think you've had too much to drink. I should go. Jessica's hand shot out, grabbing Eleanor's wrist with surprising strength. Empty your pockets. Now. Let go of me, Eleanor demanded, dropping the subservient tone, her own strength matching Jessica's as she tried to pull away. The sudden change in Eleanor's demeanor confirmed Jessica's suspicions. Who sent you? Marcus's mother? Or are you some kind of private investigator? In the living room, the party had quieted, the guests becoming aware of the confrontation unfolding in the hallway. Alex appeared behind Jessica, his handsome face hardened with suspicion. "Everything okay, babe?" "Our maid isn't who she claims to be," Jessica replied, never taking her eyes off Eleanor. "Check her pockets. She's been spying on us." Alex moved forward, but Eleanor was faster. Decades of police training kicked in as she twisted free from Jessica's grip, using the younger woman's momentum against her. "Don't touch me," Eleanor warned, her voice now entirely her own, authoritative, commanding. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed, recognition dawning in her eyes as Eleanor's accent slipped. "You're her, aren't you? You're his mother." The hallway fell silent as Jessica's words hung in the air. Then Jessica began to laugh, a cold, cruel sound that echoed off the walls. "This is priceless." The great Eleanor Wilson, reduced to disguising herself as a maid to spy on her son's fiancée. "How desperate can you be?" "Not desperate," Eleanor corrected, straightening to her full height, no longer bothering with the disguise. "Determined. And now I have everything I need." She patted her pocket where the recording device continued to capture every word. Jessica's eyes widened, then narrowed with fury. "Give me that. Whatever you think you have. What I have is you, in your own words, planning to defraud my son and sell his technology to foreign entities. That's not just theft, Jessica, that's espionage." Alex moved forward menacingly. "Give her the recorder, now." Eleanor stood her ground, calculating her options. She was outnumbered but not outmatched. "Not yet." "Back away," she ordered, her tone making it clear this wasn't her first confrontation. "I'm leaving now, and if either of you tries to stop me, you'll regret it." Jessica's face contorted with rage. "You think Marcus will believe anything you have on that recording? He'll think you manipulated it, set me up. He'll hate you for this. Let him decide for himself." Eleanor replied calmly, though her heart was racing. She began moving sideways along the wall, toward the front door. Jessica lunged forward suddenly, shoving Eleanor hard against the wall. "You will not ruin this for me. Do you understand? I've worked too hard, planned too carefully." The violence of the move surprised Eleanor. Despite her training, her 60-year-old body absorbed the impact painfully, her head knocking against the wall. But even as she winced, her hand moved to her other pocket, where her phone was already connected to Marcus's number, the line open. "Get your hands off me," Eleanor said loudly, clearly, making sure every word would be picked up by the phone. "You pathetic old woman," Jessica snarled, her beautiful face twisted into something ugly and foreign. "You can't stand that your precious son chose me, can you? Can't stand that he prefers a white woman to whatever ghetto trash you probably wanted for him." Eleanor didn't have to fake her shock at the naked racism. "My son deserves someone who loves him, not a con artist planning to destroy him." "Love him?" Jessica laughed bitterly, unaware that her every word was being transmitted to Marcus thousands of miles away. "Look at him. Boring, naive, so desperate for validation he can't see what's right in front of him. The only thing I love about Marcus Wilson is his bank account and his security protocols." Alex tried to intervene, suddenly aware they'd said too much. "Jessica, that's enough." But Jessica was too far gone, months of pretending finally giving way to ugly truth. "Do you know how hard it is?" she continued, her voice rising hysterically. "Having to laugh at his stupid jokes, having to listen to him talk about his mother, the great Eleanor Wilson, the brilliant detective, the perfect parent, having to pretend I enjoy him." Eleanor felt each word like a physical blow, not for herself, but for her son, for what these revelations would do to him. But he needed to hear this. Needed to know the truth before it was too late. "You won't get away with this," Eleanor promised quietly. "I won't let you hurt my son." Jessica's face hardened. "You've already lost. Even with your little recording, it's your word against mine. And we both know who Marcus will believe. The mother who can't let go or the woman he loves?" "We'll see about that," Eleanor replied, her finger pressing the button that sent her location to Daniel, their emergency signal. But first, I'm walking out of here with this recording. No, you're not. Jessica nodded to Alex and two other men who had followed him into the hallway. Take her phone and whatever recording device she has. Now. As the men moved toward her, Eleanor made a split-second decision. She raised her voice, addressing the phone in her pocket directly. Marcus, if you can hear me, everything Jessica has said is being recorded right now. I'm at her apartment. These people are planning to steal your company's technology and sell it overseas. They're about to assault me. Call the police to 2160 Central Park West, apartment 32B. Now. Jessica's face went white. What did you just do? Eleanor smiled grimly. Called checkmate. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jessica's composure shattered completely. With a scream of rage, she lunged at Eleanor, hands outstretched like claws. You ruined everything. The physical attack came so fast that Eleanor barely had time to protect herself. Jessica's hands closed around her throat as they both fell to the floor. Do you think Eleanor will survive this attack and the truth be revealed? Share your thoughts in the comments and click on the subscribe button now to not miss stories like this. In the background, chaos erupted. Some party guests fled toward the door, while Alex tried to pull Jessica off Eleanor. Are you crazy? He shouted. Stop. This isn't helping. Eleanor fought to breathe as Jessica's grip tightened. The younger woman's face twisted with hatred. Despite her age, Eleanor's police training hadn't deserted her. She brought her knee up sharply, connecting with Jessica's midsection, forcing her to loosen her grip. As they struggled on the floor, Eleanor's disguise began to come apart. The wig pulled askew, the makeup smearing to reveal her natural complexion beneath. Security! Open up! A loud voice accompanied by pounding on the apartment door cut through the chaos. Daniel had come through with his part of the plan. Jessica released Eleanor, scrambling backward, her perfect hair disheveled, her expression wild. This isn't over, she hissed. Eleanor stood slowly, adjusting her clothing and facing Jessica with dignity despite her partially exposed disguise. Actually, it is. As security personnel entered the apartment, responding to Daniel's call about a disturbance, Eleanor slipped the phone from her pocket to check the screen. The call to Marcus had lasted over 4 minutes. Long enough for him to hear every word of Jessica's true feelings. Long enough for him to understand the magnitude of the betrayal. Long enough, Eleanor prayed, to save her son from the biggest mistake of his life. 6,000 miles away in San Francisco, Marcus Wilson sat frozen in his hotel room, his phone pressed to his ear, listening to the unthinkable unfold in real time. His mother's voice, unmistakable despite her attempt at an accent. Jessica's venomous words cutting through years of trust and love like a knife. The sounds of physical struggle, security arriving, chaos erupting. For several minutes after the call ended, Marcus couldn't move. The world he'd carefully built, the future he'd planned with the woman he thought he knew, collapsed around him like a house of cards. The technology crisis that had brought him to California suddenly seemed trivial in comparison to the personal crisis exploding in New York. Sir? We've got a car waiting to take you to the meeting. His assistant's voice came through the hotel room door. Marcus finally found his voice. Cancel everything. I need to get back to New York. Now. Within the hour, Marcus was on a private jet heading east, calling in every favor and corporate perk he'd accumulated over the years. As the plane cut through the night sky, he replayed the terrible words he'd heard. Jessica's contempt, her plans, her casual racism. And beneath it all, the stunning realization that his mother had gone undercover as a maid to protect him. The same mother he'd accused of interfering. The same mother whose warnings he'd dismissed as overprotectiveness. By the time the plane touched down at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, Marcus had reached out to Keith, his CFO and closest friend. Keith had always been wary of Jessica, though he'd kept his reservations muted out of respect for Marcus's feelings. "I've got a security team ready," Keith told him over the phone. "And I've contacted our legal department. If what you heard is true, we need to lock down all our systems immediately." "Do it," Marcus authorized. "And Keith, my mother, is she okay?" There was a pause on the line. "She refused to go to the hospital, said she needed to wait for you. But Marcus?" "Jessica hurt her. The security footage from the building shows Jessica attacking her when she tried to leave." White-hot rage surged through Marcus as the car sped toward Manhattan. His mother, his brilliant, fierce, loving mother, physically assaulted by the woman he'd planned to marry in 3 days' time. The same woman who had smiled at family dinners while plotting to destroy everything he'd built. When the car finally pulled up to Jessica's building, police vehicles were already parked outside. Marcus took the elevator to the 32nd floor, his heart pounding in his chest. The hallway outside Jessica's apartment was crowded with officers, building security, and several shell-shocked-looking party guests being questioned by detectives. And there, sitting on a bench in the hallway with a detective at her side, was his mother. Eleanor's disguise was in disarray, the gray wig askew, makeup smeared to reveal her natural skin tone beneath, glasses missing. But her posture remained regal, her composure intact despite the chaos surrounding her. "Mom," Marcus called out, pushing past an officer to reach her side. Eleanor looked up, relief washing over her face as she saw him. "Marcus, you're here." Before he could respond, a commotion from inside the apartment drew their attention. Jessica emerged, escorted by 2 officers but not handcuffed. Her perfect appearance was shattered. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair disheveled, expression wild with a combination of fury and calculation. She froze when she saw Marcus, instantly transforming her expression to one of tearful relief. "Marcus, thank God you're here. Your mother, she broke into my apartment. She's been stalking me, pretending to be my maid. She attacked me when I discovered her identity." Marcus stared at the woman he'd thought he loved, seeing her clearly for the first time. The performance was flawless. The trembling lip, the vulnerable posture, the calculated tears. How many times had she manipulated him with these same tactics? "I heard everything, Jessica," he said quietly. "I was on the phone. I heard what you said about me, about my company, about my mother." Jessica's expression faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Darling, no, you heard what she wanted you to hear. She set me up, recorded me out of context, pushed me until I said things I didn't mean. She can't stand seeing you with a white woman. She's been trying to sabotage us from the beginning." It was the same argument that had worked on him before, playing on his fear of being controlled, suggesting his mother's concerns were racially motivated, but this time the words rang hollow. "I heard Alex's voice too," Marcus continued, his tone hardening. "I heard you talking about selling my security software overseas. I heard you laughing about how you've manipulated me." Jessica's eyes darted around, looking for escape routes, allies, anything. It wasn't what it sounded like. We were role-playing, joking around. Those people aren't even my real friends. They're actors Eleanor hired. The desperation in her voice might have been pitiful if it weren't so calculated. Even now, caught in her lies, Jessica was spinning new ones, creating elaborate scenarios to explain away the unexplainable. "Detective," Marcus addressed the officer standing nearby, "I want to press charges. For assault against my mother, for attempted fraud, for corporate espionage, whatever charges will stick." "No," Jessica shrieked, lunging toward Marcus only to be restrained by the officers. "You can't do this to me. Everything I did was for us." As Jessica was led away, still shouting protestations of innocence and declarations of love, Marcus turned back to his mother. Without a word, He wrapped his arms around her, holding her with a gentleness that belied the storm of emotions inside him. "I'm so sorry," he whispered against her hair. "I should have listened to you." Eleanor returned his embrace, her body finally relaxing after weeks of tension. "You're here now, that's what matters." 24 hours later, in Marcus's penthouse overlooking Central Park, the full truth was finally laid bare. Spread across Marcus's dining table was the complete case file Eleanor had compiled. Photographs of Jessica's hidden laptop screens showing her previous victims, financial documents revealing how she and her team had systematically drained the accounts of at least 6 other tech entrepreneurs, recordings of Jessica's own voice detailing their plans for Marcus and his company. "Alex DeVries," Eleanor explained, pointing to a photograph of Jessica's partner. "Real name Alexander Petrov. He's worked with Jessica, whose real name is Yelena Sorokina, for at least 6 years. They've targeted tech CEOs exclusively, focusing on those with valuable intellectual property they can sell overseas." Marcus reviewed the evidence silently, his face a mask of controlled fury. "And I fell for it. Completely. She's a professional con artist, Marcus. They all are. They've been doing this for years, perfecting their approach each time. You're not the first intelligent man they've deceived, and you wouldn't have been the last." Keith arrived then, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. The investigation had expanded rapidly as the scope of Jessica's criminal enterprise became clear. "We've got him," Keith announced without preamble. "Alex rolled over on Jessica and the entire network as soon as we picked him up, trying to cut a deal for himself." Marcus looked up sharply. "Did he confirm the overseas connections? The technology sale?" Keith nodded grimly. "Russia, China, North Korea, they were shopping your security protocols to the highest bidder. They had buyers lined up before the wedding was even planned." The FBI agents stepped forward, introducing themselves. "Mr. Wilson, the implications here go beyond corporate espionage. This crosses into national security territory. Your cooperation will be essential as we unravel their network." Marcus agreed without hesitation. "Whatever you need. But first, where is Jessica now?" "In custody," one agent replied, but still maintaining her innocence. "Claims she was set up, that Alex is lying to save himself, that your mother orchestrated the whole thing out of jealousy." Marcus's jaw tightened. "And what does she say about the recordings, about what I heard with my own ears?" "Says it was taken out of context, that she was performing a role, testing her friend's loyalty." The agent's skeptical tone made it clear what she thought of this defense. As if summoned by the discussion, Marcus's phone rang, Jessica's number on the display. He stared at it for a long moment before answering on speakerphone. "Marcus, please," Jessica's voice came through, tearful and desperate. "You have to listen to me. This is all a terrible misunderstanding." "Is it?" Marcus replied evenly. "Was it a misunderstanding when you mocked me to your friends? When you discussed selling my technology to hostile foreign powers? When you attacked my mother? That woman is not who you think she is." Jessica's voice hardened, her mask slipping again. "She manipulated this whole situation. She disguised herself, invaded my privacy, recorded me without consent. To protect her son," Marcus finished for her. "Which is exactly what a mother should do. She couldn't stand seeing you with me, a white woman, taking her precious son away. Everything I did was for us, Marcus. Everything." Marcus looked at his mother, at Keith, at the FBI agents listening to Jessica's increasingly desperate lies. "There is no us, Jessica. There never was. The wedding is off. You'll be hearing from my lawyers and apparently from federal prosecutors as well. You'll regret this." Jessica's voice turned cold, all pretense of innocence vanishing. "You think you're so smart, but you were the easiest mark we've ever had. So desperate for love you couldn't see what was right in front of you." Marcus ended the call, the final pieces of his illusion shattered by Jessica's venomous farewell. The room fell silent as he absorbed the magnitude of what had nearly happened. Not just personal heartbreak, but professional destruction and potential national security compromise. "She's right about one thing," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was blind. I wanted so badly to believe in the future we'd planned that I ignored all the warning signs." Eleanor placed her hand over her son's. "That's not weakness, Marcus. That's humanity. We all want to believe in love." "How did you know?" he asked her. "From the beginning. How did you see what I couldn't?" Eleanor smiled sadly. 30 years as a detective teaches you to recognize patterns. But more importantly, 35 years as your mother taught me to recognize what real love looks like. What Jessica felt for you wasn't love, it was calculation. In the days that followed, Jessica's facade crumbled completely. When Alex's full confession was revealed, detailing not just their plans for Marcus, but their previous victims, including 2 who had committed suicide after being financially ruined, Jessica's defense collapsed. Faced with overwhelming evidence and abandoned by her co-conspirators, she finally broke, admitting to everything in exchange for consideration during sentencing. The full extent of her crimes shocked even seasoned investigators. 7 previous victims, millions stolen, technologies sold to foreign entities that compromised American security interests. For Marcus, the public humiliation of canceling a high-profile wedding was nothing compared to the private reckoning with his own blindness. But through it all, Eleanor remained his steadfast support, never once saying "I told you so," never making him feel foolish for being deceived. 1 week after what would have been his wedding day, Marcus sat with his mother on the balcony of her modest home, watching the sunset much as they had done when he was a child. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking a comfortable silence, "about what you did, going undercover, enduring Jessica's abuse and racism, putting yourself at risk. Most mothers would have just kept arguing with their son, trying to change his mind with words." Eleanor smiled. "I'm not most mothers." "No," Marcus agreed, taking her hand. "You're the kind of mother who becomes a maid to save her son from disaster, who tolerates being degraded and humiliated rather than see her child hurt, who risks her relationship with her only son to protect him." "Any mother would do the same," Eleanor demurred. "We both know that's not true," Marcus countered. "What you did was extraordinary, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know how grateful I am." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across their faces, mother and son sat in renewed understanding. The crisis that might have torn them apart had ultimately brought them closer, strengthening a bond that no outside force, no matter how manipulative or deceptive, could ever truly break. Eleanor Wilson hadn't just stopped a wedding. She had saved her son's future. She had demonstrated, in the most profound way possible, that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world, stronger than deception, more enduring than manipulation, and ultimately impossible to defeat. 6 months after what would have been his wedding day, Marcus Wilson stood at the window of his office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city continued its relentless pace below, unchanged by the personal earthquake that had shaken his world to its foundation. Yet for Marcus, everything was different. The trial of Jessica Parker, or Yelena Sorotina, as court documents now officially named her, had concluded the previous week. The evidence against her and her co-conspirators had been overwhelming. Eleanor's recordings, the financial paper trail, Alex's damning testimony, and similar statements from previous victims who finally found the courage to come forward once the story broke. All of it painted a picture of a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had operated for nearly a decade. Jessica received 18 years in federal prison for fraud, attempted corporate espionage, assault, and conspiracy charges. Alex took a plea deal for 12 years in exchange for his cooperation. The remaining members of their network received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, depending on their level of involvement and willingness to cooperate with authorities. The international ramifications had been even more severe. 3 foreign intelligence operatives had been quietly expelled from the country for their connections to the scheme. Marcus's security technology, which had nearly fallen into dangerous hands, was now being reinforced with additional protections and deployed to safeguard critical infrastructure across the country. But the professional aftermath paled in comparison to the personal reconciliation that had occurred between mother and son. "You saved everything I've built," Marcus had told Eleanor during a quiet dinner at her home, shortly after the arrests. "Not just the company, but my life. And I pushed you away, doubted you, chose her over your instincts." Eleanor had simply reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "When you were 5 years old, you ran straight into the street chasing a ball. I pulled you back just as a car sped by. You were furious with me, screamed that you hated me for grabbing you so roughly." Marcus had smiled at the memory. "I don't remember that." "But I do," Eleanor had continued. "And do you know what I thought at that moment? That you could hate me forever as long as you were alive to do it. That's a mother's love, Marcus. It knows no bounds. It doesn't require gratitude or understanding. It only requires that you survive and thrive." "Is that why you endured Jessica's racism? Her degradation? Because you were saving me from an oncoming car I couldn't see?" Eleanor had nodded. "Exactly that. Some cars make noise and are easy to spot. Others, like Jessica, move silently, disguised as something beautiful until it's too late." The revelation of Jessica's true nature and the depth of his mother's sacrifice had transformed Marcus in profound ways. The company that had once been his singular focus became just one part of a more balanced life. He implemented strict personal and professional boundaries, established new security protocols, and most importantly, developed a deeper appreciation for the authentic relationships in his life. Keith had been promoted to co-CEO, sharing leadership responsibilities that Marcus once insisted on handling alone. The board had unanimously approved the change, recognizing that Keith's early suspicions about Jessica had been an invaluable form of loyalty. Marcus also created a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of sophisticated fraud schemes, particularly those targeting entrepreneurs and innovators. The foundation provided not just financial assistance, but psychological counseling for those whose trust had been so profoundly violated. 3 of Jessica's previous victims now sat on the foundation's board, turning their painful experiences into a force for healing and prevention. But perhaps the most significant change came from Eleanor herself. The woman who had spent decades solving crimes was now focused on preventing them. At 71, when most people were well into retirement, Eleanor Wilson launched a new venture, Wilson Verification Services. The premise was simple but revolutionary: a discreet, thorough background investigation service for families concerned about prospective partners entering their loved ones' lives. Using her extensive network of former law enforcement contacts and her own formidable skills, Eleanor created an ethical framework for helping families verify the character and background of potential spouses, business partners, or caregivers. "It's not about distrust," she explained during the small launch party held at Marcus's penthouse. "It's about peace of mind. In an age where anyone can create a false identity online, where con artists are more sophisticated than ever, families deserve to know who they're really welcoming into their lives." The service quickly gained a reputation for integrity, discretion, and thoroughness. Eleanor only accepted clients with legitimate concerns, refusing to enable stalking, harassment, or unfounded suspicion. She became known as a guardian of sorts, a protector of families who might otherwise fall victim to the Jessicas of the world. On a warm Sunday evening, exactly 1 year after the wedding that never happened, Marcus and Eleanor sat together on her back porch, sharing a bottle of wine as the sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. "I got a letter from Jessica today," Marcus said quietly, breaking a comfortable silence. "From prison." Eleanor raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "She wanted to apologize," he continued. "Said she's had time to reflect on her actions, that she's found religion, that she truly regrets hurting me." "And do you believe her?" Eleanor asked, her detective's instincts still sharp. Marcus smiled wryly. "Not for a second. It's just another performance. Her parole hearing is coming up in a few years. She's setting the stage, creating a narrative of redemption that might help her case." Eleanor nodded, proud of her son's clarity. "Once you've seen behind the mask, it's hard to be fooled by it again." "I've been thinking about what you taught me," Marcus said, refilling their glasses. "Not just about Jessica, but about trust, about seeing people clearly." "And what conclusion have you reached?" "That true love, whether between partners, friends, or family, never requires you to blind yourself to reality. It thrives in the light of truth, not in convenient illusions." Eleanor smiled, the pride in her eyes unmistakable. "That's wisdom worth the price we paid for it." As darkness settled around them, mother and son fell into comfortable conversation about Eleanor's growing business, Marcus's foundation, the family dinner planned for the following weekend. No mention of dating or relationships. Those would come in time, when Marcus was ready, when the wounds had fully healed. For now, it was enough to celebrate what remained unbroken, what had been strengthened through trial. The unshakable bond between a mother and her son. A bond that had withstood manipulation, deception, and betrayal. A bond that had proven stronger than the most elaborate con, more enduring than the most practiced deception. Jessica Parker had tried to sever that bond, to turn Marcus against the one person who could see through her facade. In doing so, she had unwittingly ensured her own downfall and cemented the connection she had sought to destroy. In a world full of Jessica Parkers, beautiful facades hiding calculated cruelty, Eleanor Wilsons are the true heroes. The ones who see clearly, act decisively, and love unconditionally. If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to others. See you in the next video.